IFMA Boston's Think Tank. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on NFPA 241, presented by Code Red Consultants. Sorry, I'm just reading the script here. The mission of IFMA Boston is to provide a full range of programming throughout the year, including publications, training opportunities, webinars, networking, and special events for facilities managers and those who support the built environment in the Boston area. We appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us today. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Andrew Wendt of Code Red Consultants. Andrew is a project manager at Code Red Consultants and has more than 30 years experience in fire service. Prior to joining Code Red, he served as head of the Fire Prevention Division for the Providence, Rhode Island Fire Department, oversees fire investigations, public education, inspections, code enforcement, and plan reviews. His work covered a wide variety of building types and occupancies, including educational facilities, industrial sites, nightclubs, and other assembly venues, business and mercantile properties, high rises, and large-scale storage of gasoline, LP, and LNG. Gosh, that's a lot of coverage there. With decades of firsthand experience witnessing fire safety failures, Andrew offers a deep authority, having jurisdiction perspective on construction fire safety. And after all of that, Andrew, that's very impressive. I would like to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the group. So let me share screen to see if I can get the presentation up and running. And if you could just let me know if you're seeing the presentation when it shows
good.
up.
We see the presentation.
Perfect. Okay. Well, again, thank you for the introduction. And again, my name is Andrew Wendt. I'm a project manager with Code Red Consultants. Code Red Consultants is based out of Southborough. We're right on Route 9, just inside of 495, but we actually now have satellite offices out on the West Coast, outside New York City, and in the Metro Washington, D.C. area. We're up to 82 team members and still trying to grow. And we work with a large number of clients, architects, developers, building owners, and people like yourselves in facility management to tackle safety challenges. If anybody has any questions about Code Red, please feel free to reach out. I think our website, the link to our website might have been put on the intro to the presentation.
And let me ask you this. I'll ask you this, Andrew.
Sure.
Are we able to share your slides at the end of this? You can.
Yes, I can. Absolutely, yes. We'd be happy to share the slides.
Okay, and then when I send that out to everybody that attends today, I'll include your and Corey's information in there.
Perfect.
And just so everyone knows, Corey was unable to join us today as he had a family situation that he had to take care of. So Andrew is doing it all for us.
Okay. So just to give everybody a little background on construction fire safety, and the previous slide said fires in Boston, but we did, this is actually tailored to just fire safety in general. I have a handful of slides of some historic fires, both dating back to the Hotel Vendome in Boston in 1972, all the way up through the present, that have had some fairly significant impacts on how the fire departments or how the authorities having jurisdiction view construction fire safety, and how fire departments look at construction projects and impairments in the operations that are going on. Hotel Vendome, way back in 1972, there was a floor collapse because of a weakened column where construction was being done to install new ductwork. That column was cut into, and after a fire, while fire department was in overhauling, there was a partial collapse of the building. I'm sure many of you who have been in the Metro Boston area for any period of time recall this fire in 2014 in the Back Bay, where 2 Boston firefighters were killed. The fire was started from hot work, which was not permitted, in a building at 296 Beacon Street. It was an extremely windy day. Wind pushed fire throughout the building, and unfortunately 2 firefighters were killed. The impact of this fire was both the city of Boston and the Commonwealth started to enforce hot work permitting and hot work training requirements much more significantly. Cambridge in 2016 had a 10-alarm fire, again started by smoking materials from construction workers discarded into some construction debris. I think it was in a recycle bin outside. In the end, 18 buildings were damaged, 100 people were displaced. Imagine the impact nowadays in today's housing market and the availability of apartments. Who's liable for that? What's the impact of immediately displacing 100 people because of a fire? Several large wood frame apartment buildings that burned 2017, both in Boston and in Waltham. These fires really increased the scrutiny of large wood frame construction operations in and around the Commonwealth. Several other fires that occurred in new construction projects in Boston where firefighter access was difficult. Standpipes were not labeled or standpipes were not operational. Significant delays in the fire department being able to get water on the fire. Much more recently, we had a fire out in Amherst in late 2025 where fire in a construction site next to a building that was actually not under construction, it was occupied, spread to that building, ended up damaging that building, and to the point that it had to be torn down. This is something we've actually had come up with some new construction projects where there's even some pushback, like, oh, it's a fully sprinklered building that we call an exposure. The sprinkler system is going to handle that. In this case, it didn't. And a lot of times the sprinkler system is designed for a fire inside the building, and it's not designed for, in this case, where a fire outside the building might all of a sudden be spreading to 2, 3, 4 floors all at the same time. And even just more recently in Boston, 2026, a fire at a construction site. This one, I believe, was due to temporary heating being too close to combustibles. So the point to today's presentation is we're not here to tell you that you're not allowed to have a fire. We're here to try to prevent fires. It's acknowledged there are going to be fires. Our goal is to significantly reduce the likelihood of one of those fires happening. And if there's a fire, significantly reduce the likelihood that there's going to be injury to building occupants or to construction workers or employees. And if there's a fire, the fire department's going to be able to easily access it and control that fire before it grows to any significant size. So NFPA 241 is specifically referenced in the 527 CMR, which is the state fire code. I understand there are some members and there might be some attendees who are either outside the Commonwealth or may do work outside of, at facilities both in Massachusetts and in other states. NFPA 241 is a referenced publication in fire codes and or building codes in many other states. I believe throughout New England, I think all the other states have adopted at least some version of NFPA 241. Here in Massachusetts, it's the 2022 edition. If you get into Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, I believe they're all still in the 2019 edition. But the content in the standard is pretty much the same throughout those documents. The 2022 edition obviously has some additional requirements that don't appear in the previous ones. In Massachusetts here also, the building code has adopted NFPA 241 And having an NFPA 241 program, an actual written program, is part of the construction documents required at the time of permit. It's in Chapter 33, as you see on the screen. I think I jumped ahead too many slides. There we go. So what is the goal of NFPA 241? Limit fire exposure in existing occupied buildings. It obviously it applies to new construction as well. We're going to sort of tune out new construction, being that you all are facility managers. I know you have the chance of doing some new construction, but largely we're just going to focus on renovations in existing buildings. We want to protect building occupants. We want to protect people that are near construction areas. Like I said before, we want to mitigate fire risk and reduce the chance of fire either occurring and spreading outside of the construction area. And again, NFPA 241 applies to construction, alterations, and demolition in a structure. That's specific code language in the Massachusetts Fire Code. So there is applicability to yourselves both as a facility manager, where you might have a general contractor coming into your building and you should understand what they should be complying with, and you might have internal projects that constitute alterations or construction inside of a structure that you might not have hired a general contractor. You're managing it yourselves in this. So the NFPA 241 still applies. Who's involved in NFPA 241? Who are the stakeholders? It's yourselves. The term FPPM, you'll see that referred to a lot, and it's actually on one of the upcoming slides. That's the Fire Prevention Program Manager. That very likely for the building might be yourselves, or for the the campus, the facility, it might be yourselves. The general contractor who's involved, if the project has been subbed out to them, subcontractors, anybody that's involved in the project. It could be the framers, it could be the drywall subs, obviously the fire, the subs that are installing fire protection and sprinkler systems, the subs that are doing hot work, everybody that's involved in the construction project. Third parties, the design team, a fire protection engineer, an organization like Code Red Consultants, and then obviously the AHJ, both the fire department and the inspectional services or the building department. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some very general requirements that appear in NFPA 241. If you have used NFPA 241 before, great. If you haven't, then this is just supposed to be an overview. We could very likely talk for 2, 3, 4 hours about NFPA 241 and get into all the details. So unfortunately, this has to be a very, very high level overview. But if there's any questions about any of this, it's actually if you're typically managing construction projects, if you're dealing with a lot of construction projects, there is free access on NFPA's website, or I would almost encourage buy a copy for yourself. It's a relatively thin standard. It's fairly easy reading, and it's a great piece of reference material. I've been at Code Red for 4 years, and I was involved with construction fire safety in my previous life as an AHJ, and almost daily I probably have NFPA 241 open.
Andrew, quick question.
Sure.
It's Andrew Delpreet. I know they have the NFPA 241. It sounds like a few years ago they were trying to have some of the buildings adapt to an NFPA 241 master plan. Are those two of the same, or was that a phase, or do you have people use them interchangeably?
It's so the master plan, that's basically something for yourselves, like written for the building, that helps you manage construction projects that are going on in your building. It's the city of Boston and to a large degree, Cambridge, they push that heavily, especially if you're dealing with a multi-tenant building where potentially you might have, 2, 3, 4 different general contractors coming in doing totally unrelated projects in different spaces, and every single one of them needs to manage impairments to fire protection systems. Outside of the Metro Boston area, I would say it's unlikely that you're going to be dealing with a master 241 program. But again, it's if you're managing a large facility with multiple buildings, or if you know you're doing a lot of construction projects, it's a good tool to have. It's the master program's not written to address a specific project. It's written to address how you should manage multiple projects and what's the facility's tolerance for impairments and how construction projects should behave. Whereas what the general contractors typically developing, or what we're doing for the GCs, that's specific to one project.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So this is basically this is the general requirements. This is what's in NFPA 241. Again, it's a lot more in depth than that. We don't have time to get through all of it, but the next coming slides we'll talk briefly about a lot of this. Most importantly, the who's responsible for fire prevention in a building, and that is you. It's the owner. The owner of the building is generally always ultimately responsible for fire prevention in most fire codes. In construction, it would often be delegated to the general contractor by the owner, but ultimately the owner needs to be involved and needs to be responsible for their facility. But as you can see, the owner and the FPPM has a fairly significant list of responsibilities for construction. Something that I didn't list on here specifically with NFPA 241 is a written fire prevention program is actually a requirement with the standard, which is again adopted into the fire code. So temporary construction inside of a building, temporary enclosure where you might have to, like the picture in the middle where you're opening up a facade and you need to enclose it somehow to maintain a somewhat weather tight exterior. Putting up command posts, having fuel fired equipment in the building. All of those, NFPA 241 has specific requirements both for materials that can be used in temporary construction, protection that might have to be in place, UL listings for equipment, how to manage the risk of fire and or ignition when you're introducing that into a building. Utilities, both temporary and permanent utilities to a building, how they're being managed. A lot of times when temporary electric service is being installed, NFPA 241 will require that be identified so that if the fire department has to show up, they can find a location to shut that off in a construction project. Permanent heating systems, is that going to be maintained throughout the building during construction? Because if it's not, then that's going to clue the fire department in on there might be temporary services installed. And again, that might include additional fuel storage. It might include heaters that could be venting carbon monoxide into the building. Water supply, is my water supply going to be impacted by the construction project? Do I, in both domestic and for fire protection? I include the picture in the middle of the slide. Shows a fire hydrant because this is probably one of the biggest reasons why we, as NFPA 241 plan writers, will get a call from a fire department. There's a project going on. They looked at the program that we wrote and they give us a call and say, hey, I was just out on a project. I tried getting in touch with the GC, or if it's after hours and they're blocking a hydrant. Do you mind trying to get in touch with them and see if they can get that remedied? The fire code, it's not an NFPA 241, it's in the fire code, specifically says for a hydrant, a 3-foot width needs to be maintained all the way around the hydrant. And where you have one like this one, where it has one of the large ports, a 5-foot clear space needs to be maintained in front of that. So something to note, these pictures, as we go through the slides, these are all photos that I took on construction sites. So you can see, like, that's a reason why the fire department is going to call. Processes and hazards. These are things that are going to be introduced to the building that could increase the amount of fuel, increase ignition sources, increase the likelihood that a fire could occur, or the likelihood that if there were a fire, it's going to be larger or spread more often. NFPA 241 has requirements for dumpsters, trash chutes, if that trash chute has to be sprinkler protected if it was combustible. Managing construction material and equipment. Doing a major fit out or towards the end of a new construction project, you're bringing in a lot of new materials to the building. And how do those materials get shipped in? They're all in cardboard boxes. How's the waste being managed? How's that, increased fuel loading being managed in the building? If there's significant amounts of hot work, are we storing flammable and combustible or in compressed liquids and compressed gases on site? Where are they being stored? Are they being stored in a compliant fashion? And are they being permitted? You'll see with a lot of these processes and hazards, a lot of these come with some type of permit that during construction might have to be applied for from the fire department and or the building department. Construction and alterations in historic properties and cultural resource properties. For those of us that are in the Commonwealth, this is actually a chapter that only appears in the 2022 edition of NFPA 241. Think about some of the really old buildings in Boston, 1700s, 1800s. What do those buildings look like? Why do they pose more of a fire risk that the plan needs to address the hazards with that? These buildings weren't built with necessarily rated construction. They might have more void spaces. They're built with wood that has had hundreds of years to cure and dry out. NFPA 241 has additional requirements for construction, largely with electrical hazards, with specifically properties that are historic. Has yet to be adopted, and don't know if it's going to be, but the next edition of NFPA's standard for historic structures, there is the likelihood that the newer standard has restrictions on lithium-ion batteries. And if the next time the Commonwealth updates their fire code, if they pull in that language, there's the possibility that the presence of lithium-ion batteries, both with e-bikes and scooters, but even with the power tools that the workers are using, storing them and charging them in the building, those very likely are going to be addressed in an upcoming standard. Demolition projects in a building. NFPA 241 talks about maintaining fire protection systems. There's an expectation with fire departments, and it does vary from AHJ to AHJ, but there's an expectation that fire protection is going to be maintained during demolition for as long as possible. If there's significant asbestos abatement, which a lot of us are dealing with because we have a lot of old buildings, while there's workers in the building, are we maintaining fire protection? He mentions utilities and heating and cooling, because coupled with maintaining fire protection, we need to be able to maintain a above 40-degree ambient temperature in our buildings. Roofing. I'll play on the video quick. It's luckily it seems like across the board there's a lot less asphalt and tar roofing being done. It seems like most of the roofing that we see being done is with adhesives and rubberized roofing. But again, torch applied roofing still comes with a 2-hour fire watch requirement and some significant restrictions in FPA 241. As a side note, I can say roofing operations, this is probably, when we go on site visits, this is probably the most likely case where we see gas cans laying around. Aside from like outside the building and, in the vicinity of the flammable storage lockers, we often see gas cans unattended up on roofs where there's construction going on. Underground operations, we collectively in facility management probably not dealing with this very often, but again, underground operations, as you can imagine, there's less fire department access, there's limited egress for the construction workers, and there's much more significant risk of smoke spread underground because there's the limited venting. So NFPA 241 has some significant additional requirements with underground operations. There's also two other chapters in the 2022 edition of NFPA 241 on mass timber construction and large wood frame construction. I didn't include slides with those only because we were trying to keep to time and B, like not focus as much on new construction given the audience, but there are additional requirements with specifically construction of those types of structures. So again, if you see that coming, if you're involved with it, just note that it's there. There are fire code requirements with it. So that was sort of a very, very quick overview of the general requirements in FP 241. One to focus specifically with fire protection and life safety systems and impairments of those, because this is really why we get involved a lot, and this seems to be where the significant complications arise with projects, where we have to talk about affecting means of egress systems and affecting fire protection and other life safety systems in the building. Means of egress during construction. Simply put, if it's an occupied building and we want to maintain it as an occupied building, existing means of egress needs to be maintained. Is that going to be possible? Not necessarily. What if we're doing work that's in the lobby? It's in the means of egress. What if we need to do work inside of a stair? This is where a significant amount of planning needs to come in. But essentially, if we're serving an occupied building or an occupied area of the building, the general public, where they're located, they need to be afforded with code compliant means of egress at all times. Just again, some photos we've taken just to point out some of the things that come up. What do you see in this? What do you see in this slide? They erected looks like a temporary curtain that, when that's closed, are we going to be able to see the exit? Look at the left-hand side of the photo. There's an exit sign pointing towards the ground. Is that, that's not compliant configuration for means of egress if that's serving the public. We might have to put up temporary barriers for dust control. Are these affecting lighting? Is this affecting visibility of exit signage? In this case, it looks like it may be. I don't know I can't remember if we're pointing towards an exit, but if there's one at the far end of the one at the right, we've obscured the exit sign. So for planning out the construction, we might need to talk about having more exit signage installed. The photo on the left here, I love this one. That can we just put a barrier across an exit stair? In this particular case, this was part of our plan. This was part of the impairment planning for this construction project. And outside of the field of view to the right hand side, they actually cut in a door and put a code compliant temporary stair tower because there's actually scaffolding set up inside of this stair. There's some significant work going on inside of the stair. But otherwise, without that planning, we can't just simply close off a stair if we need it to serve the building. Lastly, even just maintaining means of egress outside the building, getting the exit. The exit is both from the exit door all the way out to the public way. In this case, there's an exit door immediately to our right. We've got construction fencing where otherwise somebody could have walked straight out to the street. Are we maintaining a compliant width? Who's responsible for the snow removal to make sure that we have, again, a code compliant path for the public to reach the street? Water-based systems, sprinklers, standpipes, the fire protection water supply in general. If it's an otherwise sprinklered building, the expectation is that sprinklers will be maintained during construction. So I'll go through a couple of photos with this, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about impairment planning after that. But essentially, this sums it up. If existing sprinkler systems need to stay alive, if they can't stay alive, it's an impairment. NFPA 225, which is the standard for water-based maintenance of water-based fire protection systems, specifically defines two types of impairments: a short-term impairment, which is essentially during one work day or 8 hours, and a long-term impairment, which is over 8 hours, and it has unique requirements for both of those. In this case, you can see there's some capped sprinkler heads, and the finished ceiling has been removed. The sprinklers were designed to be within 12 inches of the ceiling, because that's what's going to allow the heat to accumulate from a fire and cause those sprinkler heads to activate. Now that we've removed that ceiling, was there a plan to how are we going to maintain sprinkler coverage? Because now the heat's going to bypass these sprinkler heads and it's going to accumulate at the deck above. In this case, this is I think a double height space, and the general contractor installed a dance floor because they had to do work at the ceiling level. Well, in this case, there were sprinklers at the ceiling level. Now those are not protecting what's underneath the dance floor. So what type of additional coverage has been provided underneath the dance floor? Will construction operations be involved putting up a significant amount of scaffolding where we're going to be blocking sprinkler protection? And this is what we would commonly build into a plan in planning out the project in an NFPA 241 plan, is when we're removing an existing finished ceiling assembly, or removing all the tiles, like the sprinkler head that's at the bottom, that's with the red circle, that used to be in the finished ceiling. It's now considered impaired because the heat's going to bypass it. So upright sprinkler heads were installed in the green circle shown immediately under the deck above. Again, just another photo showing what we would consider to be a sprinkler impairment. Standpipes. Standpipe system in general, it needs to be maintained operational during the project. And construction materials, we see this a lot. Construction materials can't impair fire department access to those standpipes. The fire department connection, where the fire department's going to come in and actually supplement water to the building. Is construction going to impact fire department access? Do we need to have a plan in place for moving the FDC? Do we need to have protection around it because of work being done? Do we need to put up additional signage? Even where's the construction logistics going to be? You're going to allow the general contractor a small fenced area outside the building. Is that right there at the FDC, like in the picture on the right, where they're going to be parking trucks, or they're going to be putting the dumpster right in front of the FDC? And it's no longer going to be usable. And fire pumps. Not really much to show here. This one actually looks like it's in pretty good shape, but if you have a fire pump in your building, is it being tested and maintained? A lot of times we're seeing AHJs ask for these types of records at the start of a project. Like, oh, hey, you're doing work in the building, you're going to be doing work on the sprinkler system. Prove to me that your fire pump is operational and it's being maintained. On a probably much more important note, is the fire pump being replaced to the project, or is there significant work being done that's going to require that the fire pump be taken out of service? In which case, that's something that needs to be addressed in the NFPA 241 plan. Fire alarm systems, in general, we need to maintain a fire alarm system. If you're modifying the system, it requires a fire alarm permit. Within a construction area, if it's not serving the public, a lot of times in an NFPA 241 plan, we'll write something in where we're going to keep it in what we call a make safe condition, where we still have pull stations, we still have notification appliances for the construction crew, but maybe we'll have a plan to reduce the number of smoke detectors, or change them out with heat detectors, or have a bagging plan, so that we're not having to call the fire department daily because we had an alarm activation. And NFPA 240, NFPA 72 also addresses impairments, an abnormal condition. And I put the picture of the fire alarm panel here for a reason. You can see that both the supervisory and trouble lights are illuminated. Most AHJs are not going to be okay with, oh, hey, I'm just going to like remove the smoke head and leave the panel in trouble. They're not going to be okay with that. So there needs to be a plan in place in the NFPA 241 plan for how I'm going to manage the smoke detectors that are in my space, so I'm not setting them off every day. Just some somewhat extreme examples that probably don't require explanation of. This one in particular, though, this is just to illustrate, like, maybe you're removing a wall that has a pull station or an AV device on it. Is there a plan for? We know that's going to happen, so have temporary construction to mount those devices, so we can maintain them in the general vicinity where they were. Just elevators in particular, because we want to address this because this comes up a lot. The elevator code specifically says if you need to impair the elevator recall smoke detector anywhere on that entire run of the elevator cannot be used in automatic operation. So then your two options are the elevator's taken out of service, or it's operated with a licensed elevator mechanic. So you have a 10-story building. I'm doing work on the second floor. Hey, I need to bag the elevator lobby smoke that provides recall on the second floor. That entire run of the elevator from the ground to the 10th floor needs to be taken out of service, unless it's going to be operated by a licensed operator or some other plan. We have had a lot of success with changing out a smoke detector for recall with a heat detector. Again, that requires fire alarm permitting, and it'll require having the elevator recertified under that heat detector. And again, probably at the end of the project when it's changed back to a smoke. But just be aware that bagging elevator smokes is of particular concern. Just again, the previous photo, an elevator recall smoke missing. This one, it's still there, but is that mounted in its listed orientation? Fire hat illuminated, showing it's in emergency recall. Right. Lastly, for systems smoke control, does your building have pressurized stairs, pressurized elevator shafts, or atrium smoke exhaust? Again, this is something we're seeing a lot with AHJs, and we would ask the question when we're writing NFPA 241 plan: is your smoke control system up to date with inspections? And is this project going to impair the smoke control systems? For an occupied building, most fire department AHJs have very little tolerance for actually impairing a smoke control system. So just a slide. I'm sorry, I'm clicking back and forth here. If we have to, so there's the smoke detector that's right outside the stairwell door where I have a pressurized stair. Do we have to do work right outside that stair? What are my options for maintaining that smoke that's going to trigger the smoke control to initiate? And just have a couple of. So here's work that's being done on that floor. Could I essentially create a temporary vestibule outside that stair where I can protect that smoke detector? Or could I potentially bag that smoke and install another smoke inside the stairwell, at least just on that floor, in order to perform that work? Again, these are subject to approval by the AHJ. There's no one right or wrong way of performing it, but the consideration for yourselves is recognizing the fact that you have a smoke control system in the building, and prior to the project starting, this has been addressed in the NFPA 241 plan. Some sort of plan is in place. All right, so impairments, again, when we talk about impairments, this is mainly what we just talked about. Probably not really means of egress, because again, means of egress serving the general public, we really can't impair. We're talking about fire protection impairments, fire alarm impairments, other extinguishing systems. The philosophy should be impairments are for necessity, not for convenience. Impair only when you don't have another choice, and then keep the impairment as small as possible, the smallest areas possible, the smallest time as possible. That last note, have a permit in hand for the impairment. That's generally for Boston. Make sure you have a plan in place, and this has been presented to the AHJ. I think Boston, believe, is the only ones that actually have a specific impairment permit, but there needs to be permission from the AHJ if you're going to be impairing systems. Who's going to be involved in these impairments? It needs to be yourselves as the owner. It needs to be the fire department and the inspectional services or building department. Any affected tenants in the building. Fire protection impairments, specifically insurance carriers. I talked before about NFPA 25 defining a short-term and long-term impairment. If we're going to impair sprinklers longer than 8 hours, and we're into that defined long-term impairment, that the code requirement is that your insurance company be notified of that. And then where do we find owners' tolerance levels? Again, like this, if you have an owner's master NFPA 241 plan, you've already talked about this, and it's in your plan, and you're able to present that to the, you've already probably presented that to the fire department and building department, and you can give that to the subcontractor. But if you don't have that plan, again, this needs to be talked about prior to the impairment starting. How much am I going to tolerate impairment in the building? Again, impairments need to be planned. Can I schedule my impairments to happen when the building's not occupied? Have the general contractor come in during second shift or during third shift if they're going to have to take sprinklers down? How can I minimize what's being impaired? We have seen cases where an entire floor of a sprinkler system needed to be taken down, but work was only taking place in a small area, but because it was going to be happening for such a long period, and it was a lab tenant that they otherwise needed to protect what was going on, they actually cut in another zone control valve in order to minimize the scope of the impairment. Yeah, just some basic allowances. What we tend to see on what we'd call a routine NFPA 241 plan. One floor of fire alarm impairments, bagging smoke detectors, or actually removing detectors, only for a shift. Again, elevator recall, we're generally coming up with a plan where we don't have to impair that, or that's where we're scheduling something second or third shift when maybe the elevator could be taken out of service. Sprinkler, again, basic, one floor of sprinkler, or maybe part of a floor of sprinkler. It's not affecting occupied areas. It's going to be restored to a code compliant fashion at the end of the day. Maybe it's being impaired shut down at the beginning of the day and drained. We're going to remove the ceiling tiles. Sprinkler heads are going to be upturned, and at the end of the day, the sprinklers are going to be turned back on, and those upright heads underneath the deck above are going to provide me with that code compliant coverage. Complex impairments. Do I need to impair more than one floor at the same time? If you're managing a multi-tenant building, do I have 2, 3, 4 different general contractors on different floors, and each one of them is coming and asking me, hey, can I shut down fire alarm or sprinkler on my floor? What's your tolerance for how many floors I can manage? Most AHJs that we interact with don't have a tolerance for, in an occupied building, shutting off more than one consecutive floor. Is the floor directly above the sprinkler impairment occupied? You might, maybe the HJ is going to require a buffer floor. Say there's 2 floors of construction, we'll impair the sprinklers on the lower floor, keep the sprinklers live on the floor above it where there's still construction taking place, because there's occupied people up directly above that. Again, these are considerations that need to be talked about in the NFPA 241 plan prior to work starting. So what do I do with this NFPA 241 plan? This plan, this is something that, again, this is being presented to the fire department, presented to the building department at the time of permit application. It's at least in Mass, it's part of your required construction documents. But this should happen prior to the project starting, and it will carry through to the end of the project. This is how we're going to manage all of these hazards that we're introducing to the building during construction. It's gonna give the general contractor the step-by-step instructions on how they're going to both perform these impairments and resolve them at the end of the day or at the end of the project. Construction projects change, during the course of a project. It might be a 6-month project, probably not much, but you might have a 18-month project. What's changing during that? Is the FPPM changing because the GC reassigned folks to another project? Did the scope of work change? Were there unforeseen circumstances? Does your NFPA 241 program address that? Or do you have a schedule with the plan writer to make sure that program is being updated? Again, the program, which should be a copy of which should be maintained on site, needs to reflect how construction and impairments and hazards are being managed in the project. Again, I'm not. Well, go back to this one. I'm sorry. Not suggesting that there has to be site walks. I can say on NFPA 241 plans that we get involved with, if the project is going to be longer than 6 months, we tend to suggest that, hey, as the plan writer, we should revisit this at the 6-month mark, or at the, even the 4-month mark if it's that significant a project. If there's a really, really significant interior demolition phase to the project prior to the rebuild, maybe we want to have a phased NFPA 241 plan that the first phase of it deals with the interior demo scope, and the second phase of it deals with the rebuild part of it. Maybe we'll get out there on site and just a second set of eyes to see if the plan is being complied with, or do we need to change the impairment strategies, or do we need to change what's written in the plan? The NFPA 241 plan should be a fluid document. It should reflect the site conditions and the hazards at all times on a project. So, with that, let me give a second. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see if there's any comments, because we're at the, I think, 50 minutes in mark. I know that was very quick, but does anybody have any questions that we could talk about? Let's see.
No, very informative. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Again, I would highly encourage, if you are directly involved with managing construction or overseeing contractors coming into your facilities that you manage, I would highly encourage, pick up a copy of NFPA 241, or get the free access to NFPA 240 NFPA online, and read through the standard. It's very easy reading. It's a great reference material. Does Code Red write NFPA 241 plans? Zach, yes, we do. We do, and there are a number of other companies out there that write them as well.
Hey, Andrew, you may have said this, but is this a statewide ordinance or a national?
This is adherence to NFPA 241 is required by the Massachusetts Fire Safety Code. And it is also required by, I believe, at least all of the other fire codes throughout New England.
Okay.
If you get into, I don't know if anybody here has facilities in New York. New York doesn't deal as much with NFPA, but the further outside you get, you might be into the International Fire Code. But throughout the country, even the International Fire Code, if it's not directly referencing NFPA 241, there is a chapter in the Building Code, there is a chapter in the IFC that deals with construction fire safety. You might see different names for responsibilities, but pretty much all of your codes have requirements for managing construction fire safety.
Cool. Thank you.
Just to add to that, so we're right in Boston, and you're 100% correct. You touched on it with the fire, where the Boston Fire Department really cracked down. But every project that happens here in Boston, the general contractor asks for a 241 plan. It's part of the submission documents to the city. So they don't even allow us to move forward without it. So that's why I was asking we do it. We transitioned to a master 241 plan for us, because to Andrew's point earlier, last summer, I think we had construction on 5 different floors, different vendors, different contractors. And it was kind of like a little bit of gymnastics and figuring it out, who can do smokes, who can do impairments, because you can't do the multiple floors. Good practice, but you can't be isolating smokes and sprinklers at the same time. Just additional context, because like you said, it varies depending on how far you go to the outside.
Cool.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they want to ask Andrew?
This Andrew's good. Thank you.
I know it's confusing with you, Andrew, right? So, all right, then I'll turn it back over to Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. That was a lot of content. So if anybody has questions, make sure you reach out. But thank you again for joining us today. If you're not a member of IFMA Boston, we hope you found today's program valuable and that you'll consider joining our chapter. You can find information on the website at ifmaboston.org or reach out to Queen Geo at geo@ifmaboston.org. Lastly, please take a look at the upcoming events for our website, which include a tour on May 13th of Schneider Electric's Andover Innovation Hub and Global R&D Center, as well as our Spring Golf Classic on June 16th at Red Tail Golf Club in Devens. I'm going to say Danvers. Devens. Foursomes and sponsorships are now available.
All right. Thank you all. Everybody have a great day.
Great. Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.